the tears have antibiotic effect. They have antiviral effect, antifungal effect. They're protective.
I remember the days when some of the new phakic IOLs that were being, gone through the FDA clinical trial process were doing really high corrections. And so there were so many happy people.
You're like, golly, do I have to wait for my lens to get fuzzy? Because it's not zooming in, or I'm not needing reading glasses. I think I'd like to consider like early cataract surgery.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Free Range Vision. I'm Matt Jensen alongside Dr. Vance Thompson. And for nearly 2 decades, we've been pioneering in practice, business, and team leadership. We'll cover everything from the pivotal lessons we've learned to the formidable challenges we've overcome and sometimes lost to, providing you with the essential tools to steer your journey and empower your team as you venture together. So whether you're at the helm of a practice or simply striving to cultivate a stronger culture, well, you found your flock. Let's venture off the beaten path together. Welcome to Free Range Vision. Well, welcome everybody to Free Range Vision. You know, we get to travel all over the country, and one thing we commonly hear is, LASIK's kind of dead right now. We think that maybe the days of corneal surgery to correct for vision might have had its day, and we're thinking more inside the eye. Well, today we're going to talk about that on Free Range Vision, and I'm joined here by my friend, Dr. Vance Thompson, to talk about that very topic, because when the rubber meets the road, they have a point. It feels like LASIK is down, but do you think it's dead? Let's get into it.
What an amazing topic, and a topic that's so near and dear to my heart. And so I'm super excited that you chose that topic for our talk.
Yeah, well, it's timely, right? Because we've just finished some of the meetings around the country through the fall kind of circuit, and everybody's wondering, what's happening to their volumes in light of, maybe the shadow of reimbursements getting cut in other parts of their programs. And I think that some of the cash pay options have been a ballast for them, and they're worried. And so maybe first we'll talk about your own philosophy on it. And then after a minute or two, we'll get into what you feel like the dynamics are outside of your practice. But tell me about your personal philosophy on it, or what you're seeing.
So all of us are trying to serve our patients to the very best of our ability, which means educating patients about their best options for correcting their vision. And we're all big fans of glasses. We're big fans of contact lenses. The optical corrections just keep getting better and better. Glasses look cool. Mm-hmm. And contact lenses are a great way to get the no glasses look, especially for the changing eye. When people are at that younger age where they're changing a fair amount, or even for that patient who just feels like they don't want to step into the surgical realm, the glasses correction will always be number one. I think contact lenses will always be number 2. But when it comes to the surgical correction of refractive error, which happens to be my specialty and my passion, LASIK, in my opinion, is still king. And we've learned so much after being involved in the beginning of PRK and the beginning of LASIK and beginning of phakic IOLs and the beginning of SMILE and a lot of the pseudophakic options to correct refractive error. My philosophy is one of comprehensive, refractive surgery. Even my team, I say, hey, even though we did a lot of those early trials in LASIK and have continued on with all the optimizations and evolutions, we're not a LASIK center. And even though we do a lot of phakic IOLs, we're not a phakic IOL center. And even though we do a lot of pseudophakic correction, we're not a pseudophakia center. We are a comprehensive refractive surgery center. And so when we approach an evaluation, we talk about those things: the optical correction, the surgical correction, and everything in our diagnostics, our exam, our discussion, our patient education is, should you stick with optical devices or should you do surgical? And if you're going to do surgical, what is your best option?
Well, I want to go back to one of the first things you said. I remember attending one of your seminars, and I'll bet it was 23 years ago when we were just working on marketing together. And you opened with, glasses and contacts are really good options. And I think, even starting there is an important place to just remind people that, the current state, it's in some ways, in many ways, it's not worth bashing.
Right.
They're really handy. They look good. A lot of people are so used to them that they wouldn't kind of know their own identity. There are some risks, right? You don't want to sleep in your contacts too long, or if they're not disposable ones, or things like that. And you see some of that in your practice. But talk to me about just walking a patient through, or a prospect through, that first interaction of those options, non-surgical versus surgical options for refractive error.
Well, one of the things that I like to tell patients is that in my first eye exam, I tried to flunk my eye test so I could wear glasses because I thought they looked really cool. But my vision was good and they figured it out, and I didn't get to actually get a pair of glasses. But I am actually a big fan of the glasses look. But the functionality of doing a lot without glasses, some people, there's fear in all of it. There's fear for people who are dependent on glasses. What if those glasses aren't around in a certain emergency? But also, obviously, people for their hobbies in their life, like to not be dependent on them. But they're a beautiful option, and so are contact lenses. And I want people to feel really good about, if they decide to not do surgery, that those are really good things. And even when you're starting to look into surgery, there's nothing wrong with continuing with optical devices and researching your options surgically, so that that consultation leads to your daydreaming about what should I do in a more accurate fashion, knowing what you're a candidate for and what you're not a candidate for.
Another thing I heard you say that I remember reiterating throughout the years is that, chances are, if you're relatively happy with your visual quality with glasses or contacts, it stands to reason that can be simulated at least that well with a surgical option.
Correct.
For the most part. Does that still hold true today?
That's exactly right. And so, with modern day options, if you, choose surgically right, I always say, if you see well with glasses or contacts, there's a surgical option for you to help you see well without them. If you don't see well with glasses or contacts, refractive surgery, as far as cornea or phakic IOL, may not be the best option for you. After you've optimized someone's eye, for instance, a lot of people don't realize the blur that comes from just a dry eye.
Mm-hmm.
So optimizing their tear film oftentimes leads to better glasses and contact lens correction, and definitely surgical correction also. So after an eye is optimized, and this is the importance of a good eye exam, if you're not happy with your glasses corrected image, you want to understand, is it something easy to correct? I just need an updated prescription. Is it something on the outside of my eye that I need my tear film optimized? Remember, 80% of the focus power, and it's more or less for certain patients, but the majority of the focus power of the eye happens right where the air meets the tear film.
Wow.
It's the most powerful focusing element of the eye. So optimizing that tear film, all of a sudden, wow, I do see good again with my glasses or contact lenses. But if you optimize everything and you're not seeing good with your glasses or contact lenses, it's oftentimes something internal. And that's usually in that time of life when our natural lens behind our pupil isn't focusing like it used to. And not only are you needing readers or bifocals, but it's starting to get to be a fuzzy lens, maybe not a cataract, but on its way. It's starting to affect image quality. And so that's when you don't want to be doing a corneal refractive surgery or a phakic IOL. You want to either be doing nothing and waiting for that lens fuzziness to actually become a cataract, or maybe you want to replace that lens sooner and go for a better image quality. But how you see with your glasses or contact lenses helps us figure out the best way to help you see without them.
Well, I want to talk about the dry eye part of it, the tear film, because especially today, it seems like everybody suffers from dry eye. I think the stats say that half of all American adults and probably children, because of our devices, our blink rate isn't what it once was or should be.
Exactly.
And so our corneas are suffering, and so our vision is suffering.
Right.
And so that's not just germane to people before surgery. It's also even after laser vision correction. They can still suffer from that blink rate and not rehabilitating their tear film, through blinking and other things. Maybe talk to our audience and the people listening who run practices or even prospective patients. When is the best time to look at your tear film or your corneal health through that kind of diagnostic, before or after surgery?
Right. Definitely before.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you don't have surgery, it should be a part of your eye exam. A lot of people don't really realize that a tear film is really a rather complicated structure. Over 1,600 proteins in your tear film. The tears have antibiotic effect. They have antiviral effect, antifungal effect. They're protective. They carry nutrients. They carry healing factors. The tears carry oxygen. I like to call the tears the blood of the cornea. You don't have red blood cells in the tear film, so that you want that tear film to be crystal clear, and that's why you don't see red blood cells in your tear film. But there's not blood vessels in your cornea. The way outside of the cornea that we call the limbus, or the peripheral part of the cornea, has blood vessels, but all the part that you see through, and a lot of it that you don't see through, is crystal clear with no blood vessels. So it's getting a lot of the nutrients, a lot of the things that blood takes to our tissues, your tears take to your cornea. And that's why you want that cornea to be happy therapeutically. And a lot of times when people have itchy eyes, they think it's allergies and it's dry eyes. A lot of times when they have red eyes, they think it's allergies or an eye infection and it's dry eyes. One of the biggest causes of eye rubbing is undertreated dry eyes. And so the tear film being the best anti-itch, anti-red drop out there, it's one of those things that whether you're wearing glasses or contacts or nothing, whether you've had surgery or not, you want a happy tear film. But definitely before surgery, because you want to take care of not only the therapeutic aspect of the tear, because you want the cornea to heal well, but you also optically, for the best vision, want that tear film happy. And you talk about one of the most important things to talk about, and that is the fact that when we look at our cell phone and we look at a computer, our blink rate goes from that 12 to 14 times a minute, where it's our beautiful little windshield wiper that's distributing the tears. It goes down to 0 to 2. Or you talk with some of these gamers, or you watch them really concentrating. I call it concentrating vision, truck drivers too, or, flying that jet, whatever you're doing to concentrate and your tear film goes down, then you're starting to see these little breakup areas in the tear film. We call it tear film breakup. And then that area is not being nourished, but that area also is experiencing light scatter. And so a lot of people will say, when I blink, my vision is more, clear. So you see that blink to blink variability. So what I tell people in this day and age is you want to take breaks from your near activities or your concentrating activities. You want to think about your blinking. And even if you're not carrying artificial tears with you, you have the best tears on Mother Earth. There's no tear better than your own tear, and just blink more. As a matter of fact, I want you to be known as Colonel Blinkmore.
I like that. I like that a lot. Now, I don't want to leave out the people who have already had refractive surgery, especially corneal refractive surgery, when we're talking about the tear film, because, it's important to catch it or treat it or rehabilitate it before surgery. But afterwards, you should also be paying attention to your tear film. Right. I talk to people who maybe think their LASIK wore off, when maybe some just good tear film chemistry would go a long way to knowing really how their vision could be optimized.
Right. Well, I was talking to someone right before coming up here to talk with you, because I know you were waiting for me, and it was a patient of mine who he's 70 years old now, and I helped him with his implant vision correction. And, he's been able to actually do distance, intermediate, and near with nothing. And his tear film, he was starting to notice that his reading vision was leaving him again. And he thought, what had happened was wearing off. And he lives on one of the coasts, because we treat people from all over, had him see an eye doctor. And sure enough, it was his tear film. And now his reading vision's good again. And so it's amazing how optimizing that tear film is so important. And you want to remember with surgery, whether it's, cataract surgery, phakic IOL, or corneal refractive surgery, there's drier eyes afterwards. So surgery induces dry eye. And typically that gets better with treatment and time. And so very, very important.
Yeah, that's I think if there's nothing else that people take home from this conversation, and even though we're talking about the market is LASIK dead, to not talk about tear film health, we would be it wouldn't be ideal. We have to talk about that because it's such an important part of a pristine and happy outcome.
If I could just say one more thing, because I agree with everything you just said, that it's also, since it's there and it's not maybe as always as respected as it should be, that tear film. Sometimes, people want to maybe wait and see how it goes with the tear film. And I always say, I would prefer to optimize it before we do anything. And so if there's anything I could coach patients and doctors and people out there, it's just treat that tear film to the best it can be, whether you're going to have surgery or not, but definitely do as much as you can for it prior to surgery.
Excellent. Well, I want to transition now to something you keyed in on as our conversation began, and it was about not being a laser refractive surgery center, not being an implant refractive surgery center, and others. And one thing I remember you saying early on is when you only offer one thing, there's a tendency to overrepresent it.
Right.
And talk about that and why you're not just a LASIK center, and there's a lot of national chains and some quality doctors do work there, but it's also perhaps the only thing they offer is a laser-based vision correction. And for higher corrections or maybe corrections that don't have a healthy tear film, I just want to, ask you about those different kinds of models and why it's so important to really invest in a quality clinical exam as part of the discussion.
So I like to be an advocate for comprehensive refractive surgery and your diagnostics helping you understand what is your best option. And in general, with corneal refractive surgery, I remember when we did the FDA trials, we were doing corrections in the 90s up to, 15 and 16 diopters on the cornea. And those are large corrections, something that we wouldn't do anymore because we've learned that there's a sweet spot for laser vision correction. And most people, once you're starting to get to 7 or 8 diopters of myopia or nearsightedness, we start thinking about other options. And even now, even for lower corrections, if the cornea, shows any reason that maybe it shouldn't have laser or it can't accept that full correction, even if it's a 5 or a 4 diopter correction or even lower, we're thinking about an implant. And for instance, the Evo ICL, we can get it in our country for down to 3 diopters. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the world, you can get it down to 1 diopter. And so, implants work well for low corrections. And if it's your lens getting fuzzy or hazy behind your pupil, pseudophakic corrections we can do for any correction. Even if someone has 0 refractive error and just needs reading glasses, you can do a pseudophakic correction. So, we talk about the nomogram, what, is the best correction for my level of correction. And usually for, up to 3 or 4 diopters, it's a pretty easy decision. We're, going to be doing PRK or LASIK or SMILE. Corneal refractive surgery really works great. If you're a great candidate, meaning you have, low corneal high order aberrations, or meaning there's low light scatter going on in your cornea, it optically is functioning at its best, and it's a nice thick cornea. We talk about the corneal thickness, and the rest of your eye exam is normal. You can oftentimes get very quality corneal refractive results up to 7 or 8 units of correction. Can you go higher? You can, but the cornea, this beautiful, pristine structure that defines tear shape, because remember, the majority of the focus power happens right at the air-tear interface. But what defines a tear film shape is that cornea. And if you change its shape too much, even if you get someone to 0 correction, they can end up with an image quality they're not happy with. But with modern day lasers and how smooth it leaves the cornea, going up to 7 or 8 can be very reasonable. But again, we're talking about for above that an implant, below 3 or 4 corneal refractive. Once you're in that kind of 4 to 7 range, you're having
Lots
a discussion.
of options, yeah.
Should we be doing my cornea? Should we be doing an implant? Should we be doing nothing?
Well, and I remember the days when some of the new phakic IOLs that were being, gone through the FDA clinical trial process were doing really high corrections. And so there were so many happy people because they had the Coke bottle, glasses experience. And to see that they're now being used now for lower corrections, kind of even an entry point to refractive surgery. It's fun to know that there's a whole range now in addition to laser vision correction like LASIK, PRK, and SMILE.
Yeah, for sure. And patients really actually like the idea. They understand phakic IOLs. Just when we say phakic, for those of you out there that maybe haven't heard that terminology too much, we're talking about a word spelled PHAKIC. So the Greek or Latin term for lens is phakos. PHAKOS. And so when we're leaving the natural lens in there, because in a younger person, that natural lens is providing something very magical, and we call it accommodation, that ability for that lens to change shape and see distance, computer, and near in a seamless zooming fashion. And so leaving it there is, super good for patients to get that full range vision. And so when you're doing a phakic implant, think of it like an inside the eye contact lens.
Mm-hmm.
And people wonder if they can feel them. You don't feel them. And so it can be a beautiful image quality for someone who's not a candidate for laser vision correction or is attracted to the implant type of correction.
Well, and I think one of the things that some of your patients enjoy about that is you don't have to do anything with the cornea as far as permanent tissue removal.
Right.
And they're removable later on if you end up having cataract surgery or another implant procedure. It can be, taken out when you replace that natural lens. So some definite perks there. Definitely.
And I think it's also important to remember when we talk about the sweet spot of laser vision, be it PRK, LASIK, or SMILE, they work quite amazing at low to moderate corrections. And so if you do a phakic or pseudophakic correction and you're not 100% corrected, you're 95% corrected, and you feel like you're on the 5-yard line, you're doing everything without glasses, but not quite the Christmas you were ultimately looking for and the Christmas that you get closer to a 0 correction. The way we enhance that is most commonly with LASIK because it's the most accurate way to do those low corrections. So that's why LASIK is so important in refractive surgery. It's not only beautiful as a standalone procedure, but it's how you enhance, oftentimes a PRK.
Mm-hmm.
You can enhance if you need a SMILE enhanced. You typically don't do SMILE on top of SMILE. You enhance it with LASIK. If you need a phakic IOL enhanced, you don't exchange the implant. You do a small LASIK fine tune. If you have a pseudophakic correction and you're not quite 0, we don't typically exchange the lens. We do a LASIK fine tune. And that's why LASIK is such an important procedure in the world of refractive surgery, because not only is it, again, great as a standalone procedure with the right patients, it's the enhancer of all of them.
Yeah, I really like that too, because when you're doing a procedure inside the eye, just like when you have a magnifying glass, if you were a boy who lived in the country like I did, and you used it to burn a leaf with the sun,
right,
and you focus that light by moving it up or down,
right,
towards the sidewalk. Same thing with the lens inside your eye.
right,
If it doesn't sit at just one spot, it can focus light differently.
right.
And so your ability to maybe fine-tune vision after surgery with a laser to make sure that it's really pristine on the retina, that's a really handy way to do things. Vance, I'd like us to go to break for a moment, but when we come back, I want to talk about other refractive procedures inside the eye, like RLE or CLR, as some people call it.
Okay.
We'll be right back.